Hello everyone, kamusta uli kayo? We're back and we are still talking about the COP26 that was concluded in Glasgow on November 13. And this is Usapang Klima from Glasgow to the Barrio. Magandang umaga muli. Ako po si Atom Araullo, your moderator for this conversation. If you are still joining us, could I please ask everyone once again to share this live video on your social media pages so we have more people who can react to our conversation. Ituloy natin yung ating panel discussion kanina. I hope that Sir Albert, Rodney, and Val are still here with us. And I'd like to wrap up a little bit, but I'd like to go to Rodney and Val to give us some of their thoughts once again on the concluded COP26. Siguro, Rodney, we'll start with you first. In terms of adaptation, we were speaking with Director Albert about the what do you call this? The climate finance and climate justice. Um, do you think we are on track? Can the Philippines actually pursue these adaptation strategies given the commitments in terms of financing at the COP26?
I think Atom and Sir Albert knows this. Uh, we need to come up with the national adaptation plan, and as he said, there's a need to come up with a plan because if we are looking for financing, the finance mechanism will have to look for your plan. If we don't have a plan, which is of course transparent, inclusive, bottom-up approach, then how can we fund a certain proposal if we don't have a plan? So I think the Climate Change Commission, which is in transition from now on until I think February, and we have an election coming in, and we'll have new commissioners as well. But then
Mm-hmm.
again, with DNR, and we have the CCCAM, the Climate Change Cluster for Adaptation and Mitigation, we hope that we will be able to come up with that plan, not only at the national level. And I hope that NEDA, the National Economic Development Authority, maximizing regional development councils because they have the network already. As I have said, I've been with the Regional Development Council for about 9 years already. And the first time that the Climate Change Commission was invited to be a member of the Economic Development Committee and even a non-voting member of the Regional Development Council, we need to bring down climate action at the local level. Even if the Climate Change Commission has no regional offices, we need to maximize all those networks. So I think Sir Albert is very very right that we need to come up with that plan. But on top of that, there are agency level plans as well that we need to look at because they have their own priorities. Again, we need to integrate this with our development pathway. Our development pathway, it should not be separate. So that's why again we still have nine years 2030 for sustainable development goals, and that we are asking ourselves, are we achieving those goals right now? I think for climate action, yes, but not that really. Institutionally, we still have to reflect on ourselves, and that's the biggest challenge for all of us with the Climate Change Commission right now. With the Department of Finance, being there, we hope that inclusivity and transparency should always be the top priority of the government. Thank you.
Thank you, Rodney, for your optimism. Val, tanungin kita kung, this is your first cup and you clearly have, very, um, let's say, important observations, no, as part of the youth, how the whole negotiations are conducted and the participation of different stakeholders. How do you plan as a young journalist as well to share these lessons to the community now that we are operating post COP and the hard work begins?
Mm-mm. Yeah. I remember I had conversations with a friend, we were talking, sabi namin, ang totoong labanan at ang totoong the fight against the climate crisis is really back in the communities where lots of lives are at stake. And, the COP26 is not an be-all, end-all event for the climate crisis, and especially for CSOs and NGOs who are working on the ground, trying their best to in works of mitigation or adaptation or loss and damage, and even on awareness and climate change communications, like the work we do at the Edge. Yes, it's the work now is to laymanize whatever happened in COP26 and
Yeah.
let it reach the masses. Very important. I had a talk just yesterday at may nagtanong sa akin, Kuya Val, because these were youth from Davao City, and they were asking me, parang sobrang elitist ng ating usapan when it comes to klima, when it comes to environment. We're all English speakers, government leaders are in their suits, etc., etc. And I agreed and said, so they were asking, paano ba natin to iparating sa masses ang usaping klima, ang usaping to the barrios, like this conversation is all about. And I said, well, we cannot blame um the underprivileged sector for not being so much involved in these negotiations, in spite being the very victims of the climate crisis, because hindi yun yung priority nila eh. Yung priority nila is to survive, to eat 3 times a day, to send their children to school. And that's why conversations come up from people like us who, bring forward these kinds of commitments, these kinds of demands, etc. And so, because it's not their priority, we should acknowledge that it is our priority because we have access to make it a priority. So, I think the work now is really on laymanizing the conversations that we're having now. And kami sa Edge, we're partnering with school publications from across Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao to try to build their capacities on communicating climate change to those communities who don't even know that what is happening to them is because of climate change. Because again, their priority is survival. It's not to rid us of climate change, and it's not their fault. And because we have access and privilege and power to make the important decisions for the communities who don't even know that they are suffering from the effects of climate change, I think that should be a priority moving forward for young people and for CSO representatives as well.
Thank you very much, Val. Really, really a big challenge, and it's nice to hear, the thoughts of our youth leaders, our young leaders. As we all grapple with the challenge of learning the lessons from COP26 and trying to connect that with the solutions, the action that we need on the ground in countries like the Philippines. Maraming salamat sa ating panel, and I hope that you guys stick around for the next part. Of course, if you can't, I'd like to thank Director Albert, Rodney, and Val for joining us. But at this point, I would like to call on our next panel, which is composed of reactors representing local stakeholders. We are zooming into communities with the goal of tackling how climate collaboration should look like at the local level post COP26. So sabi nga natin, from Glasgow to the Barrio, or to the barangay, or to the sitio. We start with Mayor Tin Antonio of the municipality of Alcala in Cagayan Valley. She's the proponent of the Green Wall of Alcala project. Magandang umaga.
Magandang umaga, Atom. Good morning to everyone. And thank you so much for organizing for this initiative to bring Glasgow to the Barrio, and also for the opportunity to share our community's climate change experiences and struggles. To be honest, Atom, and to our distinguished speakers, Glasgow seems so far away. And so this discussion, this dialogue is really timely. And to show you what we've been doing so far in our struggle against climate change, we prepared a very short video presentation. So thank you again. I am Tin Antonio, first-term mayor of the municipality of Alcala, Cagayan. This is our story. This is the Green Wall of Alcala. In December 2019, we experienced in Alcala what they call a 100-year flood, one that has a 1% chance of happening in 1 year. Barely 11 months after, it happened again. In November 2020, another 100-year flood took place in Alcala. We were overwhelmed by 15-meter-high floodwaters. 24 of our 25 barangays were flooded. 7 barangays were totally submerged. 19,011 persons were displaced. 6,565 homes went underwater. And 52 million worth of crops and livestock were destroyed. Our people suffered tremendously. We turned to our Filipino scientists to ask why. Alcala requested University of the Philippines geologists Dr. Fernando Siringan and Kino Gershon Sarmiento to study flood and riverbank erosion in the Cagayan and Parad rivers, as well as the state of our lands and watersheds. The Siringan and Sarmiento study recommended the planting of vegetation shields along the Cagayan and Parad rivers to form a belt of protection. But we in our town turned this flood mitigation measure into our life's mission: to build the Green Wall of Alcala on our riverbanks, farms, watersheds, roadsides, schools, and communities. We will build this mighty wall of native trees that will save our lives and our children's lives and secure our town's future. In the next 3 years, we will start planting and growing 10 to 30 meter wide vegetation shields in various sites along the Cagayan and Parad rivers. Only Philippine native trees shall be planted. In farms on floodplains, we have encouraged our farmers to abandon yellow corn farming and herbicide use. Herbicide kills all vegetation and weakens the soil, causing soil erosion and exacerbating flood. In the next 3 years, we hope to convert 636 hectares of yellow corn monoculture to land devoted to diverse products such as white corn, peanut, bamboo, cacao, coffee, cassava, eggplant, ginger, pepper, and dairy. We have also convinced farmers in 8 out of 12 small water impounding projects to stop yellow corn farming and herbicide use in the surrounding watersheds and to shift to agroforestry. We have started to plant native forest, flowering, and fruiting trees on these watersheds that have a combined area of 172 hectares. At first, we were met with stiff resistance, but we explained to our farmers that we are losing topsoil at the rate of 100 tons per hectare per year. If we do not act quickly, in 5 to 10 years, we will lose our 12 sweeps that irrigate 570 hectares of rice land. In the next 3 years, we intend to convert the watersheds of all 12 sweeps of Alcala into forests and agroforests, covering an area of 342 hectares. In the past year, we have planted 10,735 native forest and flowering tree seedlings on roadsides spanning 34 kilometers. 8,040 of the seedlings survived, garnering us a survival rate of 74.9%. In the next 3 years, we plan to plant and grow 53,576 native trees to form a beautiful canopy over 195 kilometers of road in Alcala. We will also partner with teachers, parents, and students to plant and grow native trees on the grounds of our 27 elementary schools, 5 high schools, and 159 Wi-Fi learning hubs.
We have engaged our 25 barangays to plant tiny, dense native forests in their communities using the Miyawaki method. 8 barangays have established their Miyawaki forests. We dialogue and secure the long-term commitment of sectoral and civil society organizations, discussing with them how the Green Wall of Alcala will surround and protect our riverbanks, farms, watersheds, roadsides, schools, and communities from massive floods. We explain how building a mighty wall of native trees would increase biodiversity, sequester carbon, effect cooling, save critically endangered native tree species, and stop the spread of invasive alien species. We present how the Green Wall of Alcala would bring livelihood and ecotourism opportunities and at the same time foster stewardship and concern for health and wellness.
The path is hard, but it is the only way forward. It has been laid out before us. All we need is the courage and will to take it. Together, hand in hand, we will build the Green Wall of Alcala.
Ang galing, ang galing talaga nung plano, Mayor Tin. Really, really very inspiring and very comprehensive. Maybe you'd like to add some more detail, especially after COP26. How far along are you in terms of executing this vision, and ano yung mga nagiging challenges along the way? And maybe one more question, isama ko na para isang diretso. In terms of the response of your colleagues, siguro other local executives, are you seeing more optimism and more participation on the part of local executives to make their development plan more green and in line with our objectives to mitigate and to adapt to climate change?
Well, Atom, it's a continuing advocacy. The mindset of people cannot be changed overnight. So it's a matter of reaching out to them, dialoguing with them, explaining that what is happening to us is the result of climate change. And as you can see, we were able to mobilize our entire community because we came from a concrete, traumatizing experience. We experienced 2 100-year floods in a span of 11 months. And so that was the jump off point of the municipality of Alcala. And we were able to convince and engage the whole community in the Green Wall of Alcala. But of course, there's a lot of work to be done. Alcala is just one town in the province of Cagayan, and Cagayan is just one province in the 80 plus provinces of the country. And we really need to push this initiative. We would be very, very thankful for any help. Any help would be welcome because it is a humongous task. And actually, in the context of COP26, I would like to latch on the Green Wall of Alcala and our initiative to what was discussed about the National Adaptation Plan. If we do not have a plan, how can we tap into the resources that's being prepared by the world leaders? That was the climate pact in Glasgow. So these are the things that we need to consider. I hope that the ENR would really dialogue also with communities so that they have something to bring to the next session next year in COP27. And we would be very appreciative also if government, especially national government agencies, would align their programs with our climate change adaptation measures. Like, for example, we would be really, really thankful if the DNR would seriously implement the National Greening Program. That is the planting of trees in forest lands, Atom, and very unfortunately, we hear that the mortality rate of trees planted is something like 20-25%. That's an awful record. I hope that the DNR would start promoting Philippine native trees instead of mahogany and melina, which are actually alien invasive species. I hope that the Department of Agriculture would start um, promoting diverse crops and not push for yellow corn and distribute yellow corn seeds, because um, what accompanies yellow corn farming is herbicide use. I hope the DA would also make a policy on, the prohibition on the use of herbicide, because the truth is agriculture is now the challenge to reforestation. Before it was logging or illegal logging, but the truth is it's really agriculture, the encroachment of upland farmers in our slopes, our mountains. Even here in the Sierra Madre mountains, mountain ranges, that is what's happening. It's yellow corn farming and herbicide use. So I hope that the climate change people in government would look into that. Also, I hope the DPWH wouldn't make it so hard for people to plant trees along roadsides. I hope they would incorporate greenery and vegetation in their designs. It's really a matter of crafting a comprehensive adaptation policy so that in the end we are really able to bring the Barrio to Glasgow. So it's not just the other way of around of learning about the discussions and the climate pact that was the climate agreements that were made in the UK in Glasgow, but also sharing our narrative and our lived experience and bringing that to the table in the negotiation table. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mayor Tin. Very, very important insights and hearing you speak talagang mas nagiging malinaw na kailangan talaga ng komprehensibong communication and consultation with stakeholders, especially local executives and communities who are already experiencing the effects of climate change. Sana nga makita na natin yung National Adaptation Plan very soon. Thank you once again, Mayor Tin. And now, finally, last but not the least, we have Antoinette Tos, the Goodwill Ambassador of the United Nations Environment Program and the founder of Cora Philippines, to join us to share with us her take on the role of CSOs in protecting their environment and finding sustainable solutions. Antoinette is a fantastic speaker. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Atom. I'm truly grateful to be with you all today. And what an honor it is to be speaking alongside heroes of mine and heroes to all of us, to our nation, that are actually really, truly fighting for the things needed the most and working towards them most of all. I'd like to thank, of course, Fight PH and, of course, the British Embassy in Manila, Her Excellency Laura Bufils. Thank you so much for having me as well today. And, of course, Voltaire Tupaz, thank you so much for the wonderful invitation. I guess I'd like to echo really quickly the things discussed earlier on COP26. All the points are extremely valid. We're hearing different sides of the story from the youth, from, of course, businesses. We're hearing it from governments. But most importantly, we're hearing the voice of local communities and people that actually are requesting and clamoring and urging for not just I guess moments to speak or share a message, but to actually have a seat at the table, to have a stake in the discussions, to actually be involved in the processes. And when we look at the commitments being made towards mitigation, adaptation, finance, and collaboration, when we look at commitments, it's not just about the commitments itself, because as we know, sadly, these aren't always met, or at the same time, they can get delayed, they can be pushed further, or they could also be ignored. So when we have commitments, the number one thing to look at is accountability. Are we going to be tracking these commitments to make sure they are met? And at the same time, can governments actually implement them? There have been some things said about technologies that don't even exist yet that are being proposed as solutions. So when we look at these things, are they realistic solutions and realistic commitments that can actually be tracked with accountability? And also looking at businesses meeting their targets, not just for profit, but for purpose, for positive impact on people in the planet, or not just meeting them, but even exceeding them. And I feel like it's really sad to think that most people think that to get into sustainability or to have, let's say, a green recovery is different from having a pandemic or economic recovery, when in reality, these all go hand in hand. And the fact that the pandemic was actually something that started because of our destructive relationship with nature as well, says so much about really how a green recovery is the solution to a true pandemic recovery and true economic recovery, and of course, a just transition. So I feel that a just energy transition was mentioned so much earlier, and this really only means climate justice, really looking at the vulnerable, the marginalized, the people that are impacted the most, and making sure that they get the support they need, and not just, I would say, in relief, but actually the support they need to be a part of the solution, to be leaders in the solutions. So when we speak of financing, funding, and grants, we would like to see more support towards people doing work on the ground. And that's what we also heard so much of earlier. And not just that, at COP26 itself, I think Val was mentioning earlier how people felt like maybe they were there, but they could only observe. And to me, a lot of the things that we read that gives us hope and inspiration is the fact that even if those conversations do happen in such a, I would say, a grand way, at the end of the day, we see the action on the ground. We hear the voices of the people that really are dedicating their lives to taking climate action. So this is from NGOs to youth activists and youth groups, all the way to indigenous peoples and local communities that have actually lost loved ones. And they're the ones that we hope we can give more support, more funding, and more action towards as well, because they are the ones at risk. But they are not just the ones at risk. They are not just victims. They are actually the ones that can lead us into this green transition, into a just transition for our future. And in connection with that, we speak of the Philippines and, of course, the nationally determined contributions and what actions are we taking to reduce emissions. And as important as this is truly vital. Everyone needs to take action across the world. But when we look at our emissions as a country, they're really not anything compared to the largest emitters of the world. But when we look at how we are being impacted, we are number one currently in the world, according to the latest report by the Global Peace Institute, when it comes to being at risk to climate change. The Philippines has recently been declared number one. And not just with that report, there are many different reports from very much valid sources, from scientists, and we are always in the top 1, 2, 3 of the most affected. A recent report came out that determined that 75% of deaths in the Southwest Pacific region are actually attributed to our country, the Philippines alone. So as mentioned earlier, it's lives at stake. It's not just about emissions or scientific numbers and targets. It's about saving lives once again. So even if our emissions on a global level are nothing compared to the lead emitters of the world, we need to take action for our people and also set that narrative, set that example that we are here fighting for our lives. And more than anything, we need those that can actually make the largest difference to do it, to move, because no matter what we do, if we don't work globally towards these initiatives, it's almost like it could be end up being hopeless, or it could be futile and negating what we are doing. And then bringing it back to our indigenous peoples is another sector of society that we want to talk about. In the Philippines, we actually hear so much about the risks of our land and environmental defenders. When we look at that, the Global Witness actually recorded in 2020 227 deaths across the world. So that is about an average of 4 deaths per week for land and environmental defenders. And these deaths, out of 227 deaths, they took place in only 3 countries. This is Colombia, Mexico, and the Philippines. The Philippines is always at the top of this list as well. And when we look at who is protecting nature, indigenous peoples represent 5% of the world's population, but they are actually responsible for protecting 80% of global biodiversity. Imagine that. And yet, even here in the Philippines, our indigenous leaders, indigenous peoples, our forest rangers, our land defenders, are losing their life for protecting nature, for protecting our future. Even when we look at, let's say, locations like the Agusan marshland, which is actually the largest marshland in our country, or wetland in our country, freshwater wetland. And at the end of the day, even our National Geographic youth explorers, young explorers that are out there documenting stories, listening to the voices of these leaders, they themselves are getting threatened themselves. They're getting death threats for telling these stories that need to be heard. But these are stories of positivity, of hope, of action from our climate champions, from our climate warriors, indigenous peoples, local communities, women, and the youth. And these are things that matter so much, not just to us at Cora as a nonprofit, but to us as a nation. When we look at our nation, local communities have the capacity and the power, if only we can give them more support, more grants, capacitate them even further, to be able to be these leaders. Some of the things we've been working on, our Clean Cities Blue Ocean program, is actually championing women as leaders in waste management. But when we look at plastics, this in itself is not just about trash or pollution. It's still about climate change, because plastics are made of fossil fuels. So we see once again how this is all interconnected. Moving into our work with the Woman Grove Warriors of Leyte and Samar, I'm not sure if some of you are getting the alerts on your phone right now about the storms that are happening, particularly once again in Leyte and Eastern Samar. And this is the typhoon belt of our country, and not just our country, but the world. Yolanda was declared as the strongest storm to ever hit landfall, and it happened to us in the Philippines. So when we look at women that are living in this region, we actually call them the Woman Grove Warriors, because they are caring for these mangroves. They are planting them, nurturing them into maturity and growth. And these women are actually the ones that are helping protect their entire community. So when we look at local communities as leaders, we are not just supporting directly the livelihood of the people supporting these ecosystems. We're supporting their families, their children, and we're helping them save their own lives and the lives of their communities. Mangroves in particular, their simple presence can already reduce the effects of storm surges, from typhoons, from tsunamis, and including the connected ecosystems all the way to coral reefs. But not only that, they support biodiversity. So this even provides further livelihood, even for our coastal communities and our fisher folk. So nature-based solutions, once again, hopefully those are the things that we can focus on: funding for local communities, nature-based solutions, making sure that transitions are done justly, or what we call a just transition, really looking not just at the numbers of GHG emissions, but the impact on communities, the most vulnerable, the most marginalized, and really looking again on how these initiatives can be supported and brought together, as mentioned earlier, by a national plan. And once again, not just a national plan, but a national plan that is aligned with global pacts as well. I feel that I've shared as much as I could in the short amount of time that I'm given, but I hope that, with the work that we do at Cora, not just at Cora, everyone can recognize their capacity to make a difference in their own way. So it's not just about, once again, being a part of a nonprofit. It's not just about thinking that, oh my gosh, these large actions that, let's say, our climate heroes are doing or nonprofits are doing are the only things that matter. our everyday actions matter, and actually our social media platforms matter so much. This has become such a vital tool for us as a nonprofit to be able to share the message, not just of hope and inspiration, but knowledge, and also to hopefully bring support and attention towards the things that need to be heard and supported the most. So always remember that whatever platform you have on your end, that is extremely powerful, and also voting in itself. So we always say that it's never really about individuals or getting caught up in the political game. It's really looking more at what do people stand for? What do each political leader, what do each of them actually really believe in? And once again, looking at how they bring that back to the solutions that will empower us all, but most of all, the most vulnerable in our country.
We are really in awe of all the work that you do with UNEP and with Cora and your other organizations. I'd like to bring in Mayor Tin, just to ask the two of you very briefly, given the enormous challenge that we're facing, and the different situations that make it even more complicated. Where do you find the optimism and hope doing the work that you do on the ground? Siguro we can start with Mayor Tin.
Oh, the optimism is in the people, their enthusiasm. Just this morning, I was able to participate in a tree planting activity of the very beautiful Philippine native tree, Mangkono, the hardest wood, the hardest tree here in our country. And the energy of people was exhilarating. And during these months of rain, we've been holding tree planting and tree nurturing activities 3 times a week. And I guess it's coming from not just optimism, but rather this drive to really make a change for the better, because our people are coming from an experience that is very traumatic. We've had 2 big floods already, and so it's really a mix of optimism and determination, I would say. So we have that in buckets in the
Great.
communities.
Antoinette.
I guess, it's the same. At the end of the day, those that give us hope, inspiration, that keep us driving forward are the communities that we work with, our partners. We've met them along the way, and it really began with simple efforts for relief, whether it's helping them with food or educational support. But then now, really realizing and witnessing ourselves when we see them, when we meet them, when we visit them, that they are doing such valuable work already, protecting everything all around them. So being able to see that and see that through the pandemic, even with everything happening around us, from our waste workers to our local climate warriors, they never stop. The work never ends for them. It's almost like they actually don't really have a day off. So they really are our frontliners, not just of nature, but for each and every one of us. So I think them continuing the work every day makes us feel that, oh my gosh, we shouldn't have any excuses to not be a part of that and to not be involved. Because once again, they are there at the front lines. And on our end, we just hope to do whatever we can do to support what they do. And that's really what keeps us going.
All right. Thank you so much, Mayor Tin and Antoinette, for being our climate and environmental champions. And thanks for joining us for this conversation. At this point, I'd like to call on the president and co-founder of Fight Media, Voltaire Tupas, for his closing remarks. Volts. Volts, you're on mute.
Hello, magandang umaga sa ating lahat. Medyo maulan nga at makulimlim dito sa Leyte ngayon. Nandito ako ngayon sa Leyte. Yung mga kasamahan ko naman ay nasa Samar. Si Rupert is in Samar now. Yung location ko ngayon dito sa Tacloban ay in fact inabot ng storm surge noong Yolanda. at medyo yung memories ng aming coverage dito ay fresh pa rin pag nakikita ko yung surrounding bagamat bago na yung mga pintura, bago na yung mga daan at malaki na ang pinagbago ng Tacloban. But ganun pa man, it's good to know that marami pa rin mga kababayan natin, marami pa rin mga kabataan ang nagpapatuloy na maging bahagi ng mga efforts to fight climate change dahil naranasan natin ito. This is real. At ang ganitong mga talakayan ay napakahalaga para masustain yung ating conversation at yung ating pagkilos para nga makombat ang climate change. So on behalf of Fight Media, I would like to thank everyone for joining our conversation today. We're glad to see everyone sharing their thoughts and good practices mula sa talk ni Ambassador Bofis and the British Embassy Manila. Thanks for the partnership. And to our speakers, reactors, our moderator, Atom, and our audience, thank you very much for taking time to be with us this morning. Indeed, lively and insightful yung ating naging diskusyon. We've heard that under the leadership of the UK presidency, progress has been made in the following areas of climate action and ambition: mitigation, adaptation, finance, and collaboration. The government is doing its share, but according to other stakeholders, our local and global climate action and aspirations need to be bolder and more ambitious. In the end, we need to hear the voices of vulnerable sectors, empower them to be part of climate solution and climate justice, saving lives at the end of the day should be the driving force behind our efforts to save the planet. Let's sustain this conversation after this event. I invite you to be part of our fight community. We're relatively new, but we're building a network or a community of advocates and content creators. Join our Fighters Facebook group and Fights Facebook page where you're watching this. Please like our other social media platforms. See you not only online but also offline. Continue the fight. Thank you for joining us.
Maraming salamat, Voltaire, live from Leyte. And on behalf of Fight and our entire team, which is spread all over the Philippines, from Leyte to Samar to Manila to Iloilo and wherever they are, maraming salamat for joining us, our panel, our reactors, and of course, thank you so much to the British Embassy for being our partners in this conversation. And we'd like to once again send our regards and our congratulations to the team that was part of COP26, and wishing more success to all of the organizations that are working hard on the ground to spread the importance of acting right now to address climate change. This conversation will be posted online after this live stream. We hope that you're still able to share it with your friends to keep the conversation going. Maraming salamat ulit, and have a good day.